Hello everyone, this is the finale of What If Naruto Was the God of Taijutsu, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Let me out, Naruto. The blonde boy shot up immediately from his bed, gasping for breath and covered in sweat. What the hell was that? Naruto brought his hand to his forehead and wiped the sweat away. Not sleeping well. Naruto jumped lightly in surprise at the sound of the unfamiliar voice. He turned and was surprised to see Dosu shifting through his drawers. And what do you think you're doing? Naruto asked hotly as he got up and stepped to the other side of the room hurriedly. He snatched the set of cloths that Dosu had set on the ground. Hey, Dosu rounded on the boy. You said last night that I could use these for today. I did. Nothing was making sense to the blonde at the moment. Everything in his head felt all jumbled. Dosu gave him a strange look. You feeling all right? He asked as he got to his feet. Last night you agreed to let me stay here. I am on Haku-san's team as a Konoha genin now. Naruto recalled something like that now that he mentioned it. Right, sorry about that. My head just feels kind of fuzzy is all. Naruto admitted as he scratched his hair and slowly ambled out into the living room. He walked straight through and then opened the door and walked out onto the balcony to get some fresh air. He looked over the streets of Konoha and was relieved to see that everything looked like it hadn't been too damaged in this area. He couldn't believe the damage the outer parts of the village had taken during the invasion that had happened just yesterday. The entirety of the gates had been completely torn down and now Konoha's streets stared straight out into the open wilderness of the outside world. But even worse, just before the gates almost nothing remained for at least 5 blocks and depending on the area, up to 20 blocks had been completely destroyed. Most of the houses and establishments that had once been there were now just craters, scorch marks or the rare pieces of wood. Almost nothing had been spared. Thankfully, once you went farther in the damage was more than negligible. A few houses had been burnt down here and there and many windows and outside frames were badly damaged, but for the most part, things would be easy to fix. Most importantly, there were hardly any reports of civilian casualties. Naruto-san. Naruto turned to Haku, who was also garbed completely in his shinobi attire. He was looking at the blonde with a look of concern. Are you feeling well? You look pale. I'm fine. Just thinking about everything that had happened while I had been inside the barrier. Naruto turned back towards the streets and returned to gazing at the sun that has just risen over the horizon. The giant tree that the Shodai had created stood swaying proudly in his view. Haku's footsteps clacked loudly against the wooden balcony as he joined Naruto at his side. It was a well-thought-out invasion. The scariest part is, if he had actually extracted the Kyuubi, it really might have worked. At the mention of the fox, Naruto felt a terrible jab of pain in the back of his mind. Yeah, good thing I'm such a great prison. Naruto straightened himself out and attempted to laugh, but it came out half-heartedly. Are you runts ready? Zabuza appeared behind both of them, his completely repaired sword on his back. Not quite yet. Naruto said as he looked down at his pajamas. Hurry your ass up then. Zabuza sighed as he shook his head. Don't tell me what to do. Naruto shouted and took a step forward. Zabuza glared down at him and was about to respond before Naruto's eyes widened and he seemed to realize what he had just said. Sorry, I'm a little edgy. He mumbled before walking past the jonin and into his apartment to get ready. Weird, Zabuza mumbled as his eyes followed the retreating blonde's back. You think he would be a little more happy? I mean, I know a lot of people were hurt, but no one close to him. Something is bothering him, that's for sure. Haku too was watching Naruto until he vanished into his room. Bothering Naruto-kun. Both Haku and Zabuza turned their heads lightly to see Hinata standing a few feet away. She had a look of anxiety painted on her face. What happened to him? Haku and Zabuza looked at each and then back at her. We were opening, you could tell us. Haku responded. Ever since we got back from our mission he has been out of it. He looks like he is constantly lost inside his head and he's always snapping at everyone. Hinata brought her finger to her lower lip as she thought about it. Naruto-kun's seal suffered some damage in the battle yesterday. She mumbled after a few moments of hesitation. It could be causing the swing in his behavior. Well, I hope he gets it fixed soon. Dosu muttered as he too emerged onto the balcony, garbed in Naruto's usual green jacket and camouflaged pants. I hardly know the kid and he's really starting to annoy me. I'll mention something to Hokage-sama, Hinata said quickly. I'm sure he knows already, but I'll tell him the effects are getting worse. We'll leave that to you. Zabuza placed his hand on Hinata's shoulder as he walked by. We'll meet the two of you there. Hinata nodded. I'll see you three there, she said as Dosu and Haku also walked by her and continued on. She then took a couple big breaths before she took another couple steps forward and stopped outside of Naruto's door. Despite the fact that they had been going out for a while, she had never actually set foot in his house. Now that she finally had the chance, she found it nerve-wracking. She raised her foot to step in, and then, Hinata. She gave a small eep and turned to see Lee running towards her. She knew she shouldn't have been surprised that Lee showed up since they agreed to meet here, but she felt like she had gotten caught sticking her hand into the cookie jar. A moment later and she heard the door shut. She turned in surprise to see Naruto standing right there and was currently locking his door. Sorry if I made you guys wait. Naruto gave them a half a smile. We should probably get going, huh? Yosh. Let us make due haste. I am eager to receive a mission now that everything has settled down. Lee pumped his fist and the two boys began to amble away. Hinata stayed behind for a few moments, her eyes staring in shock at the door that was now closed. She had been so close to finally being inside only to have the chance robbed from her. What cruel fate, she mourned before taking the thought back for fear of being like Neji. With a defeated look on her face, she followed after her teammates. It didn't take them long to reach the Hokage Tower, but once inside of the old man's office, they kind of wished they had taken a detour. The room was packed full of people. The Hokage sat in his chair like normal and next to him sat someone they had never seen before, a young-looking blonde woman with a green diamond in the center of her forehead. Next to her was a brown-haired woman holding a pig. In front of the Hokage's desk stood the Kazekage of Sunagakure. Off to the left side was Zabuza. His 3 Genin guy was seated in the right side of the room, but he looked rather subdued for some strange reason. What the hell is with all the people? Naruto got every eye in the room to turn on his team. The Hokage and the blonde woman had been arguing quietly until a moment ago, but they stopped when Naruto had spoken up. So that's him, huh? The Kazekage said with mild curiosity as he eyed Naruto. What if it is? Naruto asked back but immediately had 2 hands, one from either teammate over his mouth. I think you misunderstood me, the Kazekage said as he slowly began to approach Naruto. I was simply curious to meet the boy that had defeated my son in battle. Naruto's mouth remained covered but his eyes grew significantly darker as he realized who this man really was. This caused the Kazekage to smirk slightly. He then turned back to the Hokage. I will be sure to send a messenger bird to our daimyo to inform him of the new arrangements to our village's alliance, Hokage Dono. Provided you honor your end of the arrangement, of course. The Hokage nodded his head solemnly. You will be taking your leave then? Yes. The Kazekage turned towards his daughter. Temari, it is time to go. He turned and began to walk out but stopped when he realized she wasn't following after him. What is it? He asked as he turned back towards her. She seemed to be fidgeting nervously. Your mission to keep an eye on the village until Orochimaru made his move has ended. It's time to go home. Temari closed her eyes and bowed her head. Dad, I want to stay here in Konoha, she shouted at the top of her lungs. The Kazekage's eyes widened but before he could respond, Temari continued. The team I'm a part of has just been completed. They would need to find a new member if I left. The Kazekage appeared to mull his daughter's excuse over in his head for a few minutes. He then turned back towards the Hokage. Make sure she is well taken care of. Temari's head shot up. Then you'll. I am not pleased with the idea, but if this is what you want, then so be it. After all, this is the first village Gaara ever created a bond with as well. The Kazekage gave Naruto a sideways glance. I want progress reports from you every week and a note every time you leave the village on a mission. Oh, of course. Temari nodded to the term immediately. Very well then, my subordinates are waiting. We have our own share of the S to take care of from this invasion. Having said that, the Kazekage turned and left the office. The old man let out a long tired sigh and pulled out his pipe, lighting it up quickly. It had been forever since he had been able to smoke. It would have been rude of him to do it with his foreign guests in the room, but now that they were gone he could finally begin to loosen up a little. Well then, on to my next order of business, he said after he exhaled a large amount of smoke. That would be us, sir, Zabuza said as he took his place in front of the Hokage. Now then, most shinobi are taking a break from missions today to mourn. While there is no funeral being held if you have someone you lost, I ask you to go visit them. If not, I will give your team a mission if you want one. The village is in great need of repairs after all. We want a mission, Zabuza said without delay. This caused the Hokage to smile. I figured you would say something like that. Sir, I have the perfect one for your team that shut down Zaku. The thing is, his broken beer littered all over the village. I would like you to start picking them up and throw them in the incinerator. We'll be using the melted metal to create all kinds of weapons. What kind of mission is that? Dosu asked incredulously. Having not been a part of an actual village before, he wasn't really familiar with how missions worked. AD rank 1. Zabuza sighed tiredly. Someone has got to do it though. This is what I get for taking a team of genin. As he said this, he was already leading his team out the door. Alright, old man, you've kept me waiting long enough. The blonde woman tapped her fingers on the desk irritably. Why did you send that pervert after me just to drag me back here? Furthermore, how did you know where I would be? They don't call me the professor for nothing. Also, you were my student once. Don't forget that, Tsunade. Upon saying the woman's name, both Lee and Hinata let out a small gasp of surprise. You're Tsunade, one of the Sannin. Hinata couldn't believe she was meeting one of the 3 legendary ninja. How is it that you appear most youthful? Lee asked almost immediately after. A throbbing vein appeared in the side of Tsunade's head. What do you mean by appear? Well, I mean, Lee's mouth was suddenly covered by Guy's hand, who had appeared behind his team instantly. Don't say anything to make her mad, Guy whispered into Lee's ear. Her strength is legendary, as is her temper. I have been on the receiving end once today. That explained Guy's unusual quiet behavior. When Guy let go of Lee's mouth, he smiled at Tsunade as innocently as he could. He of course meant you were blazing with such youth that not even the sun could compare. Really, she looks like an old hag to me. Guy and Lee dropped their faces. They should have known Naruto would say something like that. Before anyone could react, a chair flew across the room and into Naruto, knocking him over. I'm leaving. The vein that throbbed on Tsunade's head looked ready to explode. Please stay, Tsunade. The Hokage stood up from his desk. Doesn't the fact that the tree brought him back to life interest you at all? He gestured towards Guy. That tree created by my grandfather is the only reason I am here at all. If I can find a way to reproduce its effects, do you know the lives that could be saved? She whirled on her sensei. Then stay, help your village like you were meant to. Sarutobi was practically begging her. Tsunade-sama, please. The brown-haired woman finally spoke up. The pig oinked in agreement. TCH, fine. Tsunade said as she walked up to Guy. Come with me to the hospital. I want to run some tests on you. Guy rubbed the back of his head as he gazed at her nervously. Well, you see, I hate hospitals. Now, yes ma'am. Guy followed both women and the pig out of the room without another word of protest, but before that he turned to his team. Naruto was on the ground rubbing his face and Hinata was worriedly leaning over him. Lee stood just next to them both. Report to our training ground at the usual time. It's been about a month since we've trained there, but I would like to jump into old habits as soon as possible. After getting a nod from Lee, he vanished before Tsunade could yell at him again. Sarutobi emmed his forehead for a long time. Almost over, this is almost over. He kept repeating to himself. Should we come back later, Hokage-sama? Hinata asked politely as she helped Naruto to his feet. No, that's all right. The old man shook his head as he stared at Team Guy. It's just been a stressful past few weeks. It always is with the Chunin exams, but the invasion yesterday has made the headache just that much worse. He sighed again. Talking to you 3 has been something I've been rather looking forward to, actually. It'll probably be a much more pleasant experience than dealing with either of my students. Why is that old hag here anyways? Naruto asked as he sorely rubbed his head. She is a top-level medical ninja. I need her here for help in getting us back on our feet. Not only that, but I want her to study the Shodai's tree that not only defended our civilians but revived your sensei. If only she wasn't such a pain about it. The Hokage grumbled that last sentence. So what is it you would like to ask of us? Lee asked excitedly. Yes, you remember the client for your first C-rank mission, Tazuna, correct? All three of them nodded. He is in charge of repairing the walls of the village and he specifically asked for your team's assistance. It is of course D-rank pay but I would like you three to help him in this mission. Of course. We would be honored to start right away. Lee said as he gave the Hokage his thumbs up. Excellent, but before that, there are a couple things I want to take care of with you three first. Sarutobi placed his pipe down as he dug through his desk for some papers. Lee, Neji informs me that while inside the barrier you bested him in a one-on-one battle. Lee rubbed the back of his head. Well, I guess I did. He was being controlled by Kabuto, however. Neji has also informed me of that. He says that regardless of whether he had been in control or not, he believes you would have won the battle. The three genin shared a look of confusion. I am not sure where you are going with this Hokage-sama. Lee admitted after it was clear the others had no idea either. Ah, yes of course. The Hokage had forgotten. None of the genin were aware of the bet that had changed their lives so drastically and in consequence, also didn't know of the conditions. Rock Lee, I believe that your performance in the past Chunin exams was worthy of being receiving the promotion. What? Naruto was the first to respond in a way that surprised the Hokage. He had asked in a voice of disbelief. The others turned to him and he seemed to raise his own eyebrows in surprise at his outburst. Is there a problem, Naruto? The Hokage asked after he got over his own surprise. It had been a long time since Naruto had done something like that in front of him. Naruto appeared to mull over his thoughts for a few moments before he finally opened his mouth. It's not fair. He mumbled under his breath. Naruto-kun. Hinata asked in surprise. Naruto looked up and his eyes showed with resolve. We work just as hard as Bushy-brow, so why is it that he gets promoted and not us? Just cause he has a year on us. We both would have been knocked out if I was a couple inches taller and Hinata probably would have won her fight if she hadn't forfeited. Naruto. Sarutobi said with his voice laced with disappointment. I expected better from you as a shinobi of this village. Those words caused Naruto to widen his eyes. What did I? Before anyone could react he turned and fled out the door. Naruto-kun. Hinata yelled as she ran after him, leaving a shocked-looking Lee and Hokage. He was running fast and she didn't manage to catch up to him until he was out of the tower and a small ways down the street. When she finally did she latched onto his hand with her own and held fast. Naruto-kun. What is wrong with you? You're not being yourself today. Leave me alone. You can't understand. Naruto yelled as he tried to pull his own hand free. I can't if you don't tell me what's wrong. I'm your girlfriend, so trust me. Hinata begged as she refused to let go. People in the streets were beginning to gather around them. I said leave me alone. Naruto swung his arm as strongly as he could, knocking Hinata over. She fell onto the ground on her butt. He looked at her with wide eyes for a couple of seconds. Hinata, he took a step towards her before he spun around and ran off. Naruto-kun. He heard her shout but he didn't listen. He just kept running. Farther and farther he ran, weaving his way through the streets. Finally, after running for a full 10 minutes, he collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. What is going on with me? Sweat dripped down his face and dropped onto the ground. Why does it hurt? He was on his hands and knees on the ground and he reached for his seal that felt like it was on fire. He closed his eyes in pain. Then he heard it. Naruto, let me out of this cage. He looked up and the giant cage was in front of him. The QB was glaring through it as always been, this time it was different. The metal bars were melting and the fox had stuck a whole claw through it. Naruto didn't like the look of this but he faked a look of confidence. Not a chance. You're staying right here. You fool. You think you can keep me in here on your own? The QB laughed loudly. Your seal is weakening by the minute. Just hurry up and release me. I've kept you in here on my own my whole life. I've always done it on my own. Naruto yelled as he glared at the fox. Red chakra was swirling powerfully from the cage, stinging his face with the heat. On your own isn't enough anymore, and you've gone and see yourself off from your friends. They can't be here to give you moral support like last time. The Kyuubi roared as even more of his chakra blasted through the cage, blowing Naruto off his feet. Everything I was saying, that was because of you, wasn't it? Naruto yelled as he attempted to get on his feet against the force of the malevolent chakra. The Kyuubi laughed loudly. It may be true that I prompted you to say those things aloud, however, they were your thoughts deep down. You can't blame me for that. You bastard fox, is this how you thank me for putting up with you for 13 years? Naruto couldn't force himself back up. He was losing it. In the end, Kabuto's little s might have been enough. It's over, Naruto. Your B won't work this time. You're going to S alone, and then this village foolish enough to imprison me is going to follow. The fox could finally sense it. His freedom. Naruto has never been alone. A third voice said that startled them both. However, there was no one else present. The malevolent chakra that was stinging Naruto's face calmed and quit leaking from the cage completely. The Kyuubi let out a roar of anger as its claw was shoved back and the bars slowly hardened again. This isn't over, Naruto. I'll get out yet. A moment later and Naruto's eyes shot open and he was lying on his back in the outside world. The seal no longer hurt and the headache he had had all morning was gone. The Kyuubi had been repressed. How? Naruto asked as he tilted his head up. His green jacket had been ripped open by the zipper and his seal, it had been fully repaired. It looked as good as new. Need a hand, kid? The same voice that Naruto had heard inside his seal asked. Naruto looked straight up and saw a hand extended right in front of his face. He took it and was hefted easily to his feet by a tall man with long, spiky, white hair, an odd-fashioned sense, a giant scroll, and strange red markings on his face. Did you do this? Naruto asked curiously. The older man smiled at him. Before Naruto was able to hear his response, someone ran up to him. Naruto, are you okay? A middle-aged civilian asked as he stopped in front of him. I watched you collapse in the middle of the street. Who are you? Naruto didn't mean to be rude, but he didn't remember ever seeing this guy before. Is Naruto okay? Someone else asked. He turned slowly and it was then that he finally realized it. He was surrounded by people. Every single one of them was giving him a look of concern. What? I don't understand. Naruto mumbled as he spun around and looked at them all. They were all looking at him with concern, not malice, hate, or disinterest, but general concern for his well-being. Did you hit your head? You look kind of out of it. The first civilian asked as he raised his hand to Naruto's head. Maybe he is still suffering from his battle yesterday. Someone else suggested. Yeah, he did fight a tough battle to save us after all. Give him room, everyone. People were constantly throwing in their remarks and Naruto wasn't sure what was going on anymore. Just then he remembered the old guy who had fixed his seal. He turned to talk to him but realized he was gone. Where did he go? Naruto-kun. Naruto. Naruto recognized those voices. They were his teammates. Let him through. A couple people shouted and a pathway opened to let Lee and Hinata get a straight shot to their teammate. Guys, Naruto couldn't believe that after all the horrible things he had said, they still came running for him. Are you okay? They asked as they made it into the center and stopped just in front of Naruto. Yeah, I'm fine. Some strange guy showed up and fixed my seal before disappearing. Naruto rubbed his head and stared awkwardly at his teammates. You guys, I'm. Do not even say it. Lee said as he draped his arm over Naruto's shoulder. We know you weren't yourself. Hinata nodded and stepped closer to Naruto and embraced him gently. It's not your fault, Naruto-kun. A tear slid down Naruto's cheek as he looked between both his teammates. Thanks, I love you guys. He tried to wipe the tear away before anyone noticed. The crowd that had been around them quickly seemed to disperse as everyone realized Naruto was okay. It is amazing how fast opinions change, huh? Lee asked proudly as he stared around at the people of the village. I'm not sure I get it yet. Naruto said as he scratched his head. You mean you haven't heard? Hinata asked as she stepped back from him. Heard what? Naruto looked back and forth between both his teammates. The three of us are being called the heroes that saved the village from destruction. All over people are talking about our valiant battles, not just in the tournament but how we defeated the leader of the invasion. Lee answered as he held his index finger up and waved it back and forth. We're heroes, us. Naruto couldn't believe it. He slowly turned his gaze to the people around, and one thing was true. They were all looking at him, but this time it wasn't to glare. There was respect, they approved of them. He slowly felt a smile coming to his face. He looked back to his teammates and then noticed something strange. Bushy brow, where's your Chunin vest? Lee rubbed the back of his head. Actually, I turned down the promotion. Not because of me, right? Naruto suddenly felt terribly guilty. Lee shook his head. I would rather turn down the promotion and take the exam again than have you guys compete without me. He gave Naruto and Hinata both his thumbs up. Team Guy sticks together. Bushy brow. Besides, rank is hardly important at this stage in my youth. When I am older, I of course want to be a Jonin that can pass on Guy Sensei's teachings, but for now being a genin is just fine. Lee smiled happily at both his teammates. Now I believe Hokage-sama gave us a mission. It is rounding 9, so if we hurry we can beat the start of the new hour. Right. Hinata and Naruto nodded and turned and followed behind their older teammate as they all walked at an enhanced pace. Naruto peeked a look at Hinata as they walked. The two of them walked side by side and Lee took up the lead in front of them. He slowly reached his hand over and grabbed hers. Hinata didn't even look over but accepted his hand happily in her own. If she had been upset about his previous behavior, she didn't show it. That wasn't good enough for him though. Someone had to yell at him for the way he had been acting. Hinata, Lee-senpai already told you not to apologize. Hinata responded calmly as she turned her clear, beautiful eyes towards him. As long as you're always there for me when I have my bad days, I'll be here when you have yours. So much for that. Getting yelled at was clearing not happening. So instead he let out a happy sigh. I was actually going to suggest we go on a date between this mission and our training later. So he settled for the next best thing. He would make it up to her, his way. I heard of this awesome spot for picnics. Hinata's face lit up at the suggestion. I think that would be great. We haven't had a proper date since the Chunin exams started. Look who it is. The three of them heard Tazuna yell as they saw him waving excitedly at them. Inari was right in front of him waving just as much. We got a lot of work to do, today. I hope you're ready to get started on getting this village back on its feet. All three of them nodded exaggeratedly. You bet. Hours had gone by and Team Guy, mostly thanks to Naruto's clones, had made excellent progress on the first part of the walls of Konoha. The three of them had been rather surprised at how many of the other shinobi had been present in the reconstruction of one part of the village or another. The Hokage had given everyone the day off for mourning, and yet almost every shinobi in the village had reported for duty. Everyone was eager to repair the village as fast as possible. Now though, Hinata and Lee sat at Ichiraku's, looking out at the streets and enjoying the peaceful feeling of the day. It had been so long since they could actually relax and enjoy themselves without the thoughts of the Chunin exams hanging over them. The sun shone brightly and the streets were bristling as everyone appeared to be running around, taking care of one task or another. Even the civilians jumped in to help with the repairs. Naruto had run off to take care of things. The first was to apologize to the Hokage, but not before he promised to be back to take Hinata on the date. She had immediately run home herself and had prepared their food and also brought a basket and cloth for them to use. She now sat with both of them in her lap. You never would have guessed we had been under attack yesterday, Ayami said as she leaned her head over the counter. Everyone seems so lively. Their flames of youth are burning brightly as we all work to repair the damage that was done, Lee said as he pumped his fists into the air. It's good for business, that's for sure, Chuki said happily as he handed a couple more bowls of ramen to the customers at the other end of the stall. With them all working so hard, I'm getting more business than ever. Of course, having the heroes of the village here helps. He gave the two genin a wink before he began preparing more ramen. Someone say something about me, Naruto asked as he slid into the stand. Ayami shook her head. Hero for half a day and it's already gone to your head. Let him enjoy it, he's waited for this day a long time. Chuki laughed as he nodded towards his favorite customer. I'd offer you some ramen on the house, but I hear you have a hot date planned. Just save it for next time, Naruto said as he extended his hand towards Hinata. She took it and he hefted her off her seat. I'll definitely be hungry after Guy Sensei's workout. Are you going to meet me at the training field? Lee asked before they left. I actually have a feeling Guy-sensei is still going to be in the hospital. That hag seems like the type to keep him all day. So go ahead and meet us there. Naruto and Hinata both gave one last wave before they exited the stand and began walking down the streets. The sun shined so brightly that Hinata raised her hands over top of her head to block it out slightly. It's such a good day for a picnic. She turned her head to Naruto and wasn't surprised to see he didn't seem to have heard her at all. He was completely engrossed in all the looks people were giving him. She couldn't help but smile. He had finally been accepted and that made her happy. Oh, right, Naruto said as he suddenly stopped walking. I forgot, the place I'm taking you to is a secret until we get there, so put your headband over your eyes. As he said this he took the basket and cloth from her, and no using your Byakugan. How will I get there though? Hinata asked as she obeyed his command anyways. I'll carry you, duh. Just as she covered her eyes she felt Naruto lift her off her feet and carry her like one would a princess. What about the basket? Hinata was blushing heavily. They probably looked rather strange in the streets. No problems, no problems. I have a clone holding that. Hinata felt Naruto kick off the ground and land on the roof of a building. He was then jumping to them in a completely random pattern, throwing off her sense of direction so she had no idea where they were heading. He had planned that pretty well. However, in a few minutes, she felt the wind pick up greatly as she felt them ascend higher and higher into the air. She began to wonder if he was taking her up the Hokage monument. We're here, Naruto yelled proudly as he finally stopped. Watch your step, we're pretty high up, he said as he gently led her to her feet. When she was on the ground she dropped her headband down so it was around her and like normal and let out a small gasp at the sight she saw. They both stood on top of one of the highest branches of the now tallest tree in existence. She had no fear of falling off either for the girth of the giant branch they stood on, but the sight nearly caused her to slip to her knees. One could see for miles and miles up here, farther than her Byakugan could possibly let her see by easily a few hundred times. All the forests of the Land of Fire and even some neighboring villages were visible to her. Naruto-kun, this place is amazing, she whispered as the wind gently blew at her hair. I know, right, I thought you would like this. Naruto had already laid the cloth out and was sitting on the branch with the picnic basket next to him. His clone was nowhere to be seen. She gingerly sat down next to him, still taking in all of the scenery. How have things been with your clan? Naruto asked, suddenly serious. His question completely ripped Hinata from her thoughts of the world around them. She thought about her answer quietly for a minute. Much better, she finally admitted. When I returned home, they all welcomed me back with praise for both my achievements in the tournament and during the invasion. I think they respect me a little more now and are starting to look to me like an heiress and not just a failure. Naruto nodded quietly and seemed to think his next words out carefully, something that surprised Hinata. You remember that vow we made to each other the day we went around looking for a date for Bushy Brow? Hinata nodded. She would never forget it, that had been one of the most important days of her life. Naruto then continued talking. I think we've just taken an important step towards accomplishing our goals. Even without getting the les we've definitely earned the respect of a ton of people. Maybe not everyone but they'll come around. Hinata again nodded. We've come so far since that day. I remember thinking back then how much had changed in a week. But now look how much has changed in these past few months. Naruto scratched the back of his head. Yeah, I never thought I would be going out with you, that's for sure. He stopped but then seemed to realize that he should add more. It's been one of the best things that ever happened. I'm glad you confessed to me when you did. Hinata twiddled her thumbs as she thought of her clumsy confession and his following response. It hadn't really been intentional. I had been so worked up between so many people and having thought US. I'm still not sure I entirely forgive Haku-san. This caused Naruto to chuckle. He's not such a bad guy. You should be grateful to him for not me at all. I know I am. Besides, he helped us out a little during the Chunin exams as our proctor. I suppose I do also owe him for all his help. Hinata tapped her chin lightly as she mentioned this, something Naruto found incredibly cute. Yeah, exactly. So hurry up and forgive him. It's awkward if my friends don't get along. Naruto nodded happily to himself. Oh, I see. Hinata said, a hint of playfulness in her voice. You think of me as much as you think of Haku. I should have known since he looks so feminine. What? Naruto stood up suddenly, waving his hands in protest. It's not like that. I just meant you're both my precious to me is all. I mean, Naruto was beginning to panic as he tried to get his point across. Hinata giggled as she pulled at Naruto's pant leg. He crouched down next to her and she leaned into him. I know what you mean, Naruto-kun. She whispered before pressing her mouth to his. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise for just a fraction of a second before he closed them and returned her K. They sat that way for a few moments before pulling apart, half opening their eyes as they did. At that moment, the worst possible moment, Naruto's stomach growled and he dropped his head in shame. A total mood K, but what could he say? He had hardly eaten today. Hinata only giggled before opening up the picnic basket. Let's eat. Lee, save me from this place. Guy threw himself at his student's feet the moment he walked into the hospital room that his sensei had been in. Guy-sensei, Lee asked in concern as he bent down and looked at him. What kind of horrendous experiments have they been performing on you in this most unyouthful place? All kinds of terrible things, Lee. Guy was practically crying as he pulled himself to his feet by Lee's spandex. They make me sit still and day and don't allow me to talk at all. They're robbing me of my youth. Lee let out a loud gasp. Those fiends. Fear not, Guy-sensei, I shall free you from this place at once. Before either of them could move they heard the sound of cracking knuckles. They both slowly turned around to see Tsunade glaring evilly. Just get the hell out of here already. They didn't need to be told twice. They were out of the room and down the hall in less than half a second. They stopped just outside of the door leading them to freedom as it slid open automatically at an agonizingly slow pace. Finally, it was open enough for them both to shoot through and in that split second they nearly ran smack into their other teammates. Guy-sensei, both Hinata and Naruto asked with worry in their eyes. Their sensei looked half mad as he and Lee grabbed onto them and pulled them away from the hospital. I'm never going back there, ever. Guy bellowed at the top of his lungs, easily making his voice heard all over Konoha. Just what the hell happened in there? Naruto asked as he finally broke himself free from his sensei's grip. Unspeakable things. Do not even repeat it, Guy-sensei. Lee released Hinata and practically began weeping. Man, what a couple of weirdos. Naruto sighed as he and Hinata shared a smile. They are weirdos though. Hinata said as she turned to each of them. How about we exercise as hard as possible so we can respark your flames of youth? Hinata, you are such a bright student. Guy finally seemed to be calming down. Let us hurry. The sun is just setting and I need to do something youthful this instant. A second later and he vanished, presumably off to their training grounds. Well, better hurry after him. Naruto said as he, Hinata and Lee all vanished just a couple moments later. They all reached the training ground in less than a minute, but to their surprise, Guy stood just outside of its boundaries. He was staring into it with a look of shock. They all saw why immediately after. 12 other genin were in the training ground and they all appeared to be waiting patiently for something. Guy shook his head off and slowly walked into the grounds, followed by his students. Can I help you all? He asked loudly and instantly he had the attention of all 12 of the other genin. Ah, there you are, Guy-sensei. Haku walked forward and bowed to him. I brought my teammates along to engage in our usual exercise. I hope it's okay. Guy opened his mouth but no words came out. For the first time in his life he was truly speechless. Temari and Dosu took this as their time to step up. The former Suna Kanoiki spoke first. Haku speaks highly of you and your training method. It is rare that people impress him, so I would be honored if you would include me. Dosu spoke next. I know I was an enemy to your village until yesterday, but it is actually thanks to your student and Haku, who you also trained, that I came around. I am interested in learning the ways of youth that you have taught them both. Before Guy could answer them, Shikamaru lazily walked forward, followed by both his teammates. Your morning practices were a real drag, but I can't say they didn't help. I decided to start doing this too. The forest really showed me how much farther I need to go to improve. I'm just here because Shikamaru asked me to come. Choji said next happily as he munched on some chips. Ino rubbed her arm and averted her eyes lightly. Hinata really impressed me at the tournament. I figured I'd give it a try and hopefully become a little like her. It may be the first time I've been jealous of another girl. Next, Team 8 stepped forward. Naruto showed us how bad we sucked in the forest, and I'm ready to dedicate myself heart and soul to show him that we can be just as strong as he can. Akamaru barked in agreement with Kiba. Shino adjusted his glasses with his only arm. I am hoping that as a taijutsu expert you can help me overcome my handicap of only having one arm. Your intense training could very well save my life someday. I just don't want to be a burden anymore. Sakura whispered quietly. I want to be stronger so I can protect my village the way you did yesterday. Finally, Neji, Sasuke, and Tenten walked forward. I know Neji and I weren't crazy about your insane training methods in the past, but were ready to give it a try. It worked so well for these three after all. Tenten gave them all a huge smile. Sasuke huffed loudly as he looked up at Guy. I need to get stronger. It's thanks to Naruto and Hinata that I now clearly see the best way to do that. Please let me go through your exercise routine. Neji, the last one to speak, let out a long breath. Lee told me a lot of things. I now know that it is possible to overcome any obstacle in your path if you truly reach for it. That's what I want to do from now on. I want to reach forward and take control of my own fate. Guy-sensei, I am sorry for having doubted you before. Everyone, Guy felt his eyes brim with tears as he looked over at all 15 genin he had assembled before him. Their eyes were alight with youth and he knew they had what it took. He spun around and pointed dramatically at the sun that was beginning to set over the village. Let's all become geniuses of hard work together. Night had once again long since fallen over the village of Konoha. Most of the village had shut their lights off and had gone to sleep after the exhausting day of having to repair the damage that had been caused by the invasion. However, one light still burned brightly in the top of the Hokage Tower and 3 people sat awake inside. Iruka found himself questioning why this was so. He had always been a good man, trying his hardest to be good and keep his nose clean. He had worked extra hard today repairing the streets that had caved in, leaving the disgusting smell of the sewers out in the open. So why was it that he was here at 3 in the morning with Might Guy of all people? He unfortunately knew exactly why. He had been a third-party witness in what had been one of the most unorthodox team formations ever. He had been forced to stay up late that night back then for the same reason he was still up now. Hitaki Kakashi. The man was late, again. Not that it should have been any surprise at this point. He was always late. It never changed. Iruka couldn't particularly blame him this time either. He had lost after all. Guy had been bouncing around the room excitedly for about an hour and a half, but for the past hour he had been standing on his hands quietly in the corner. Something Iruka was extremely grateful for. His headache was bad enough without the man screaming all over the place. Finally, after nearly 3 long hours, a pop followed by a puff of smoke alerted Iruka, Guy, and the Hokage to Kakashi's presence. Yo, the silver-haired man said as he stepped out of the smoke, his one revealed eye smiling for him. The Hokage smiled, not at all perturbed by Kakashi's tardiness. So what kept you this time, Kakashi? You know, had to rescue a tree from a cat, wait. Kakashi raised his hand to his face and seemed to ponder his own statement in a manner that seemed incredibly nostalgic to Iruka, and not in a good way. I hope you are ready, Kakashi. Guy couldn't contain his silence any longer, much to Iruka's further frustration. The time has finally come. Oh, Guy, when did you get here? The copy ninja asked with his face buried deeply in his orange book. Damn. Guy threw his hands into the air. I can't stand that hip attitude of yours. It drives me insane. Were it not 3 in the morning I would challenge you to youthful combat. Alas, even I need to recharge my battery at night. Do we really need to repeat that night word for word? Iruka came between both men as he shouted. Things have changed drastically and yet you act like it is all exactly the same as it was on that night months ago. He looked back and forth between everyone. Iruka is right, the Hokage said, finally laying down his pipe. Iruka sighed in relief. Finally someone was on his side. If we are going to repeat the last time properly, Guy needs to start outside of the office and kick the door in. Iruka fell to the floor an instant later. You all hate me, don't you? He whimpered quietly from the ground. At those words, Sarutobi gave a long-needed laugh. With all the stress he had been building up from the past few weeks, he was really thankful for the relaxing atmosphere. Aruka was right, of course. Things had changed drastically. Yet some things would always be the same, and he hoped moments like this would continue for a long time to come. It is time we got down to business, he said after he finally managed to stifle his laughter. Aruka slowly got back to his feet and took his place in the chair that he had been sitting in before. Guy and Kakashi walked to either side of him and stood staring straight at the Hokage. Guy, as I'm sure you noticed, Lee has not been promoted to Chunin. Yes, my student has informed me that he turned down the promotion, Guy said with a small hint of pride in his surprise. Aruka, however, looked completely flabbergasted by this revelation. Turned it down? Why would he turn down the promotion? He really couldn't understand Guy or his crazy look alike at all. Lee informed me he would like to remain a genin so he can repeat the exams with his teammates. While it is very uncommon, of course, for someone to turn down the promotion, it is not unheard of. Sarutobi slowly rose to his feet, the bones in his body cracking audibly as he did. Does this mean that not a single genin has been promoted to Chunin? Kakashi already knew the answer, but he was interested in the Hokage's response all the same. While that may be true, I do not feel it is of much concern. It is just a rank after all. Sarutobi picked up his pipe and slowly began to walk to the other side of his desk. There were 7 Konoha genin, if we count Kinuta Dosu, and they all performed incredibly well. The fact is, our village showed great promise, and I think we may be looking at a surplus of assignments in these coming months. The teams that performed are easily Chunin rank as it is. Even if they do not hold the rank, I think we can see fit to assign them to higher rank missions from now on. I think I would prefer we keep them in here for a while. Guy had an anxious smile as he rubbed the back of his head. No matter where my team goes, disaster seems to be following them around. Yet they beat that disaster away with all the hard work you've put into them. I doubt you have much to worry about. Kakashi nodded his head slightly in Guy's direction as he complimented him. Huh, you say something? Guy asked, his face buried deeply inside a very familiar-looking orange book. If you are going to imitate him, at least have the decency to not hold the book upside down. Aruka rubbed the scar on his face as he shook his head. Guy took a quick look at the front and saw he indeed had it upside down. Damn it, how do you do it, Kakashi? How is it you are so hip without even trying? Guy said as he tossed the book back to his rival. Lots of hard work, Kakashi replied smoothly as he caught the book with ease. Are either of you ever serious? Aruka couldn't believe that the 2 strongest jonin in the whole village behaved this way every time he saw them. Maybe there was a pattern to this. Could it be the stronger you were, the weirder you became? If that were true, Aruka was quite fine at his current level of strength. He liked being normal, thank you very much. Now then, it is time for the bet to be closed completely. Sarutobi interrupted Aruka's train of thought. They all turned back to him with their full attention. Even if we ignore the fact that Lee and Neji's fight was unofficial, Guy is still the distinct winner as 3 of his students made it to the second round while only 1 of Kakashi's did. Would you say this sounds right, Aruka? Me. Aruka pointed to himself in surprise. I guess, that sounds fair to me. Sarutobi nodded. In that case, I pronounce Might Guy the winner of the bet, and Kakashi, as punishment you will show him what is beneath your mask. Yes. Guy shouted so loudly that Aruka was sure the neighbors had woken up. Well darn, I guess there is no choice. Kakashi sighed as he turned to Guy, his hand on his mask. Guy was practically on the tips of his toes in anticipation. At long last, the secret to Kakashi's face would be his. Aruka, despite his best efforts, couldn't keep himself from looking at the copy ninja's face with the utmost curiosity. After all, it was completely normal to want to know what was behind Kakashi's mask. Especially since he went through so much trouble to always hide it. Sarutobi meanwhile took another inhale of his pipe. The smallest of smirks was on his face, as if he already saw what was coming next. Underneath my mask, Kakashi began to pull lightly at his mask, and Aruka and Guy both leaned in closer. Is another mask? Kakashi pulled his first mask down to reveal yet another one. Silence, complete silence fell across the room as Guy and Aruka stared at Kakashi's still masked face with open mouths and wide eyes. Well then, if there is nothing else, I'll be off. Kakashi placed his first mask up and vanished in a puff of smoke a moment later. Finally, Guy seemed to regain his composure and he turned to the old man. Hokage-sama. Guy drawled loudly as he threw himself at the man's feet. Meanwhile, Iruka collapsed to the ground in a heap of disbelief. How stupid he had been, getting his hopes up like that. He should have known better with this group. They really did hate him after all. What is it, Guy? Sarutobi asked as innocently as he could, fighting off the urge to laugh. The bet, his face, my dreams. Guy continued to fumble out nonsense for a good couple of minutes before the Hokage finally decided to answer him. The agreement of the bet was he would show you what was under his mask. If you wanted to see his face, you should have mentioned that instead. I thought looking underneath the underneath was one of the first things you taught Naruto. Guy slowly rose to his feet, his eyes hidden by his bangs. When he looked up, they were lit ablaze. Damn you, Kakashi. He shouted so loud that he knew the man had to be able to hear him. I want another bet. This time show me behind both masks. An instant later and Guy was gone. Sarutobi chuckled as he walked back to his desk and sat down. This certainly has made for an interesting night. Do you think it was for the best? Iruka asked as he got back to his feet. The best? Sarutobi asked, curious of what Iruka meant. The trade, that is. Iruka clarified as he took his seat. I mean, do you think things would have been worse had Guy never come in that night and Naruto ended up under Kakashi? Sarutobi twirled his pipe around in his hands. I can't really say how drastically that moment altered the course of history. One can never know what could have been. The fact is, for better or worse, things are different and our lives have been changed. The sound of Guy screaming from somewhere in the village reached the ears of both shinobi. Yes, Sarutobi repeated with a small smile. For better or worse. The end. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.